The gravel crunched under the heels of Clara's leather boots as she walked up the long drive of the Bennett family estate, the June sun warm on her shoulders through the thin linen of her blazer. She'd parked her beat-up Subaru half a mile down the road, out of sight of the valets, and hiked the rest of the way. No need to give them the satisfaction of turning her away at the gate before she even set foot on the lawn. Somewhere ahead, a string quartet drifted over the trimmed hedges, light and brassy, mixed with the clink of champagne flutes and low, polished laughter. It all smelled like cut grass and climbing roses, and the expensive catered hors d'oeuvres being passed around on silver trays, exactly the way it had smelled at every family gala, every Christmas dinner, every graduation party she'd ever been to, before they'd thrown her out. The check-in table at the lawn entrance was staffed by 2 college-aged girls in pale blue dresses, squinting at a printed guest list. Clara didn't slow down. She adjusted her blazer, lifted her chin, and walked right past them with the easy, unapologetic confidence of someone who'd grown up on this property. "Excuse me, ma'am, do you have a place card?" One of the girls called after her. Flustered, Clara glanced over her shoulder, calm as anything. "Clara Bennett, Vivian's sister." The girl blinked, fumbling with her list, her fingers skimming down the page twice without finding the name. By the time she looked up to ask for a second, Clara was already on the main lawn, slipping into the crowd. She'd been gone 10 years, but nothing here had really changed. The same oak tree shaded the cocktail hour. The same stone fountain gurgled in the center of the terrace. The same faces drifted past. Law firm partners, foundation board members, country club acquaintances with the same soft, careful smiles. Most of them didn't recognize her at first glance. Her hair was shorter, cropped just above her shoulder, and she carried none of the polished, muted refinement the Bennett women were supposed to wear like a uniform. She looked like someone who worked with her hands, which it only took 30 seconds for her mother to. Margaret Bennett was standing on the upper terrace, surrounded by a circle of women in silk dresses, laughing at something one of them had said. The smile didn't drop away. It froze, just for half a second, the way a window shade sticks before it slams shut. She excused herself with a soft pat on a woman's arm and glided across the lawn toward her, her cream-sheath dress not wrinkling. "What do you think you're doing?" It wasn't a question. Her voice was low, perfectly controlled, sharp enough. Clara reached for a champagne flute from a passing waste tray, turning to face. "Attending my sister's wedding. Is that usual? You owned. You have no—" Margaret's eyes flicked over her, quick and gentle, taking in the scuffed boots, the blazer, the lack jewelry. "Leave now before Harold sees you and makes ugly. You've already embarrassed this family enough for—" "Ugly?" Clara took a slow sip of champagne, the bubbles sharp. "You think it's ugly? You haven't seen ugly yet, Margaret. You threw me out of this house with 1 suitcase and a bus ticket to Boston because you said I'd ruined your perfect family reputation. I think I've earned the right to stand here. You made choices." "I made choices? Or I took the fall for someone else?" Marg tightened. Behind her, Clara could see Harold appear at the edge of the terrace, tall and stiff in his tailored suit, his eyes all on them. "Didn't rush." He went over slowly, the way he always did, like every step was calculated to let the weight of his was deep, with age, the same voice that had grounded her as a kid and terrified her as a teenager. "This is not the time or the place. When is the time?" Didn't look away. 10 years ago, you didn't give me time or a place. You gave me an hour to pack my things and get off your property. No explanation, no second chance. Just gone. You knew the rules. Failed to meet. Right. The family standards. She laughed, quiet and bitter. Funny how those standards lied to me. Harold didn't shift. "If you're here for me, name a figure. I can write you a check today, and you can drive back to wherever you came from and never again." It was the exact thing she'd expected him to say. It still stuck just a little. "Money." She set her half-empty flute down on a nearby stone ledge. "I make my own. Better than yours probably, and cleaner. I'm here for Vivian. And I'm here because the man she's about to marry deserves to know what he's—" For the first time, a flicker of something like alarm crossed Margaret's face. It was gone so fast you weren't looking. "You go near Elias," Margaret said, voice dropping to a hiss. "This is his day too. You will not ruin it with your bitterness." "Ruin it?" Clara tilted her head. "I'm not the one who built this wedding on I. You are. All of you." Harold stepped forward, just an inch, enough to make his position clear. "I will have security escort you off the property. Don't test me. Call them." Clara nodded toward the string quartet, toward the 100+ guests all within earshot. "But before they drag me out, I'll walk right up to that microphone and tell every single person here existed 10 years ago. Your clients, your donors, all your little country club friends. You want to explain to them why you threw your own daughter out to protect your perfect image. Be my guest. A long, heavy silence stretched between them. Somewhere nearby, a woman laughed. The quartet to a slower, softer piece. Harold's eyes were cold as flint. You think anyone will believe you? I think they'll be so desperate to shut me up. She held his gaze, right to wonder. Margaret glanced over her shoulder if anyone was watching. When she turned back, her voice was tighter, strained. Fine, stay, but you stay at the back. You don't speak to Vivian. You don't speak to Elias. You cause one scene, and we will have you removed. And we will make sure everyone here knows you're up looking for a payout. Clara said nothing. She just lived enough. Her parents turned and walked away, back toward the terrace, Margaret already smoothing her smile back into place of arriving guests. Clara watched them go, her hands loose at her sides, her heart beating than she wanted to admit. She'd won the first round. She knew it was only the beginning. She let her gaze drift across the lawn, until it landed on the man standing on the arch at the end of the aisle. Elias Voss, tall, dark-haired, in a perfectly fitted navy suit, talking to a groomsman with a polite, distant smile. He looked like every other well-bred man she'd grown up around, except what he was about to step into. He thought the perfect Bennett daughter. How much that perfection had cost. Jesus Christ, Clara. A voice came from beside her, quiet. You actually up. Lila, her oldest friend, the only person from this hold who'd ever texted her after she left, had only been a handful of times. Equal parts horrified. You sound surprised. Clara gave her a small, dry smile. I am. Your parents told everyone you moved to Europe, speak to any of us again. Lila glanced around, nervous, like she was afraid someone would see them talking. They said you disowned the family, Clara snorted. Of course they did. This is going to blow up. Lila's voice was tight. Vivian's already a wreck today. She's been obsessing detail for months. Good. Clara's tone didn't soften. Lila sighed, shifting her weight. I'm in the middle of this. I can't. My mom works for the foundation. I can't afford to pick sides. Before Clara could answer, a soft chime rang out across the lawn. A voice over the speaker system invited guests to take their seats for the sing. The crowd began to move, murmurs scraping against the grass. Lila gave her one last worried look, then turned and slipped away into the crowd. Clara stayed where she was, back in the shade of the old oak tree, far enough that she wouldn't be seen from the front row. The quartet, the processional. The groomsmen lined up. The flower girl stepped out, scattering. Then the big oak doors of the house opened. Harold first, his posture straight as a board. Then Vivian, on his arm, in a dress so white it almost glowed, her veil trailing behind her, roses tucked in her gloved hands. She looked like a zine cover, perfect, poised, exactly the bride everyone expected her to be. Eyes lifted, scanning the crowd, like she, and then she found Clara. For a heartbeat, nothing moved. The quartet hit a note that sounded wrong, or maybe it felt that way. Vivian's steps faltered. Her fingers tightened around the bouquet until her knuckles showed white under silk. All the color drained from her face, so fast right there on the stone steps. Margaret, walking just behind the pair, out and grabbed her elbow, steadying her. Her head snapped around, her eyes sharp and black with rage. Clara didn't look away. She lifted her chin, slow and steady. The music swelled, and Vivian kept walking. No one else seemed to notice the split-second falter, the way her smile tightened until the corners trembled. Margaret's hand on her elbow was steady, unyielding, guiding her down the aisle as if nothing had happened. Harold's gaze stayed fixed straight ahead on the arch where Elias waited. Clara stood in the back, half hidden by the oak tree, and watched her sister marry a man who had no idea who he was really marrying. The ceremony was short, polished, Society magazine perfect. The minister spoke of partnership and honesty, and Clara almost laughed. Vivian's vows were steady, perfectly modulated, like she'd practiced them 100 times in front of a mirror. Elias looked at her like she was something precious. When they kissed, the crowd applauded. Clara didn't move. Guests filed past to offer congratulations, a slow stream of silk and tailored suits and well-rehearsed smiles. Clara hung back, waiting for the crowd to thin. She wanted Vivian alone, with no audience to perform for. She got her chance 20 minutes later, when Vivian slipped through a side door into the house to fix her hair before the reception. Clara followed and caught up to her in the empty hallway off the main foyer. Vivian, her sister froze. She turned slowly, veil pushed back, makeup flawless but strain visible around her eyes. What are you doing here? Vivian's voice was flat, drained. You had no right to show up today. No right. Clara stepped close. You had no right to let me take the fall for you. You had no right to sit there and say nothing while they threw me out like garbage. I was 19, Vivian whispered, glancing over her shoulder like she expected someone to round the corner. I was scared. You don't understand what they would have done to me. I understand they did it to me instead. Clara's voice was colder than she'd intended. 10 years. 10 years of everyone I grew up with thinking I was some kind of screw-up who got herself knocked up and ran away. 10 years of you living the perfect life they planned, and not once did you ever pick up the phone and say you were Vivian's jaw tightened. I sent you letters I never... Because you never wrote. You disappeared. You changed your number. You moved across the country. Because I had nothing left here. Clara's voice rose, sharp. You think I wanted to stay in a town where everyone looked at me like I was a disgrace? You got the house, the career, the wedding, the family. I got a bus ticket and a lifetime of whispers behind my back. The hallway door creaked open. Margaret stepped inside, Lacey, and put a hand on Vivian's shoulder to pull. That's enough. You got your 5 minutes. Now get back outside before someone sees you and starts asking. Look. Clara did back down. Maybe Vivian answered them. Maybe her new husband them. Viv flinched. Don't you dare involve Ella in this. He has nothing to do. He has everything to do with it, Clara said. He's marrying family. He deserves to know what kind of people he's tied to. Margaret between them. A physical barrier. You won't go near him. If you so much as say one word to him, I will have security carry you off this property. And I will make sure every person in this county hears exactly how you showed up to your own sister's wedding, drunk and for money. Clara stared at her. About that? I'd do whatever it takes to my family. You should remember. She turned and guided Vivian down the hall to the powder room. The door clicked shut behind them. Clara stood there a minute, uneven. The way Vivian had looked at her, half guilty, resentful, like Clara was the one everything. Stung word. She walked onto the lawn, and immediately felt different. Peeped at her. Side-eyed, judgmental stares, the kind that came with a story already attached. Older women by the fountain turned away. A man in a gray suit murmured to his wife, and she nodded. Margaret had... Clara walked to the far-end bar, ignoring the whispers, and ordered a burnt. And there he was, Elias, standing 10 feet away holding a scotch to an older man. Heard the rumors yet, or hadn't connected them to her. Clara waited until the older man walked away, then stepped over. Elias Voss? He turned light in surprise. That's me. Do I know you? Not yet. She held out a hand. Clara Bennett, his eyebrows went. Bennett? Vivian's sister? She mentioned she had a sister? There it was. The first crack, didn't she? Clara kept her voice light. Interesting. I'm the younger one. I've been on the West Coast. Flew last minute for the big day? Wow, that's great. He hesitated, clearly confused. She said her only family were her cousin in Chicago. Clara smiled and sharp. Now. Well, these are complicated, aren't they? Before she could say more, Margaret's voice cut in from behind, warm and smiling for old friends. She slid an arm through Clara's, a gesture that looked affectionate like a restraint. Elias, I don't think you've met Clara, Vivian's younger sister. She's been going through a hard time with her business out west. She's the blue this morning, poor thing. I think she's just overwhelmed. Her voice was just for nearby guests to hear. Clara's blood ran cold. The story was already being written. Furniture design, she said evenly, not looking away from Margaret. Oh, thank you. Of course it is, honey. Marm, patronizing. Why don't we find you something to eat? About whatever it is you need later. The message was clear. I'm going to make you a mess here for money. And you can't stop me. Clara pulled her arm free. You're right. Today is Vivian's but tonight's the and I'll be there. She turned and walked away before Margaret could reply. She could feel her back. Half the lawns. By sunset, would know who she was. Money. Clara walked to the valley for air. Her hands shook a little. She'd known they'd fight dirty. She'd expected it to feel personal. So fast. Pulled out her phone and opened her camera roll, listening to the old records she'd dug up. The ones that proved 10 years ago. Margaret wanted dirty? Fine. Clara had spent a life no one could take from her. She wasn't about to let her story all over. This time. Tonight, she was done whispering. The ballroom smelled like candle wax and roasted garlic and old money. Crystal chandeliers cast warm gold light over round tables set with white linen and polished silver. Every place card hand-lettered, Every centerpiece exactly a dozen white roses. Perfect. The way everything the Bennets did was perfect, if you didn't look too close. Clara stood just inside the double doors, watching guests find their seats. She'd changed into a dark silk blouse and tailored trousers, the nicest thing she'd packed. No more hiding in the back. Tonight, she wanted everyone to see her. The welcome dinner was smaller and more formal. Close family, business partners, old friends. About 100 people who mattered to her parents' social and professional world. All of them who'd heard the story of the disappointing younger daughter who'd run off and disgraced the family. Most still thought she was here begging for money. She spotted Lila at a back table with her mother and foundation staff. Lila's eyes met hers for half a second, then flicked away, uncomfortable. Clara didn't blame her. Not entirely. But she also didn't have time for people who couldn't pick a side. The head table sat on a raised dais at the front. Vivian sat next to Elias, smiling and nodding at a guest, her hand light on his forearm, the picture of a happy bride. Margaret and Harold sat on either side, holding court. Harold looked up and saw Clara in the doorway. His smile didn't fade, but his eyes narrowed. He gave a tiny, almost imperceptible shake of his head. Clara smiled back, cold and thin, and walked into the room. She didn't go to the... She walked straight down the center aisle, past table after table of staring guests, and pulled out the one empty chair at the far end of the head, the one clearly left off the seat. She sat. Vivian's head snapped. What are you doing? She said. Eat. Clara picked up her water. It's a welcome dinner. I'm family. I'm welcome, right? Margaret's jaw tightened so hard the muscle. But she said nothing. Not with so many people. The first one. Cream of asparagus soup, served by waiters in black. The room hummed with polite conversation, but Clara could feel the... Every few seconds, someone glanced up at the head table. Everyone knew something off. Everyone was waiting for it to over. Clara... She didn't anything. Waited. Sure enough, after the course, Harold stood up and tapped his glass. The room fell quiet. Good evening. Thank you all for being here to celebrate Vivian and Elias. For those who don't know me, I'm Harold Bennett. Polite rippled. Vivian has always been a source of pride for our family. Hardworking, loyal, committed to doing what's right. She's everything a parent could hope for. And today, she's marrying a fine man from a fine family. Margaret and I be happier. Raised his glass. To Vivian and Elias. A long hair. To Vivian and Elias echoed. Sat down. Margaret squeezed Vivian's hand. Perfect. All perfect. That was... Went quiet. Not the polite host, but the sharp, held breath quiet of something about to break. Vivian went rigid beside her. Margaret around. Actually, Clara said, voice steady. While we're all here talking about family and pros, right? I think there's no. Harold's voice cut in immediately, sharp as a knife. Clara, sit down. No, she didn't look at him. She looked out at the room, at all the faces around. 10 years ago, I heard I left town. I got into trouble, that I was reckless, that I disgraced this family and walked away on my own. That's the told you. A room. That's not what happened. I didn't leave. I was thrown out. With one suitcase and an hour to pack, at 18 years old. Because my parents decided I didn't live up to their perfect Bennett family standards. Clara. Margaret, sharp and alarmed. That's enough. You're upset, and you're making a scene. We can talk about this privately. Why privately? To her, eyes blazing. Because you don't want them to know the truth? You don't want your perfect reputation to get a single scratch? You threw your own daughter out of the house, and then told everyone I'd abandoned the family, and you let them judge me for 10 years. You made your choices. Margaret's voice rose, crashed composure. You knew the rules! You knew what would happen you. If I what? Clara took a step toward. If I got pregnant? Is that the story you all heard? She swept her gaze across the room. That little Clara Bennett got knocked up and ran off to cabby nobody wanted? The room was dead silent. Nobody was eating. Nobody was talking. Vivian was as white as a sheet, staring down at her, hands clenched in her lap. Elias looked forth between them, stunned, dawning spreading across. Well, Clara said, quieter now. Half of that is true. Someone got pregnant, but it wasn't. For a heartbeat, nothing. Then Vivian stood up so fast her chair scraped loudly against the floor. She said, voice trembling. Clara, please. Just stop. Why? Because true? Because it doesn't matter. Vivian's voice broke. It was 10 years ago. It's over. I'm married now. I have a life. Why can't you just leave it? Because it's my life. Clara's voice was cold. You gotta move on. You gotta forget. I didn't. I carried it for 10 years. And everyone in this room looked at me like I was trash. Because of you. Because of all of you. Harold forward, face thunderous. That's it. I'm calling security. Go. Clara didn't flinch. Call. Drag me out. And then tomorrow, every single person in this room will be asking themselves why the Bennetts are so desperate to shut their own daughter up. You think that's good for your reputation? For them? For the foundation? He stopped. Hands fists. He hated that she was right. Buzzed now, loud with shocked whisper. The perfect Eve was in shambles. Clara grabbed her purse. Elias, still sitting there stunned at Vivian like he'd never seen her before. Congratulations on the wedding. Welcome to the family. Then she turned and walked out, clicking loud on marble. She'd said what she could say. There, and it wasn't going away. The cheap roadside motel took 20 minutes. She'd chosen somewhere her parents would never think to look. She parked and walked up to her second-floor room. She knew something was wrong. Felt loose, like someone had jimmied it. She pushed the door open and flipped on the light. Her stomach dropped. The place was torn apart. Suitcase open on the bed, clothes strewn everywhere. Desk drawers pulled, papers scattered over. They'd come for her things. She knelt to check the hidden pocket of her case. The kept old records, copies of documents. It was empty, but not all of it on. She'd kept the most papers in her purse, tucked in a zippered folder. She'd learned long ago to keep all her eggs in one bag. Still, they'd broken in. Her things. They'd sent someone to steal evidence. This was about reputation anymore. This was about fear of what she had to break to get it back. Her phone buzzed. A text from Lila. Are you okay? That was insane. Clara typed back. They broke into my hotel room. 3 dots appeared, vanished, then appeared again. What? Are you serious? Clara. Looking for documents. A long pause. Then Clara. Maybe you should leave. This is getting too far. My mom said Harold is furious. He's not going to stop. You don't have to do this. Clara's chest tightened. Lila was good, but she'd always been safe. She'd always chosen the quiet path. She typed, You're asking me to leave after they broke into my... Leela, I'm asking you to be careful. They have money. They have connections. You're one person. Clara set the phone down. She looked around the ransacked room. They'd escalated, from rumors to breaking in it. And Lila was away. She was on now. More or less. So knew. If they were this desperate to get those documents, there was something in those papers they really did. Something bigger than just Vivian's pregnancy. She pulled the folder from her purse and flipped through the page. Eyes scanning numbers, dates, account names. She'd thought she knew the whole, but now she was starting to realize she'd only scratched the surface, and somewhere in these pages was the real reason they'd thrown her out. Morning sun bleached the motel curtains, turning the stained carpet pale gold. Clara had slept in her clothes on the armchair, one hand curled around her purse, the folder pressed tight to her chest. The ransacked suitcases still lay open on the bed, a quiet reminder this wasn't just a war of words anymore. She poured lukewarm coffee from the machine by the door, jaw tight. There was only one person with the most to lose from her digging up the past, only one who'd benefit from scaring her off and stealing evidence. Vivian. It made sense, didn't it? Vivian's perfect marriage was on the line. Vivian had the most to hide. Vivian had spent 10 years letting Clara take the fall. Why wouldn't she send someone to break into a motel room? Clara grabbed her keys and headed for the door. She wasn't going to hide. She was going right back to that estate and call Vivian out to her face. Sunday brunch was in full swing when she pulled up the drive. Tables set up on the back terrace, pastries and mimosas, kids running on the lawn. Most wedding guests were still there, lingering for the long weekend. Nobody stopped her at the door. Word had spread after last night. People stared as she walked past, curious, judgmental, quickly looking away like she was contagious. Clara ignored all of it. She found Vivian in the sunroom off the main hall, alone, stacking wedding gifts on a side table. She wore a soft yellow dress, hair loose, no perfect bride facade, just a tired woman with dark circles under her eyes. She looked up when Clara walked, and her face immediately hardened. What do you want now? Haven't you ruined it? Clara laughed, sharp and... You sent someone to break into my hotel room. You went through all my things, and I'm the one ruining it? Vivian. For a second, she looked genuinely confused. What are you talking? Don't dumb, Clara stared her. You wanted Miles. You wanted to take the evidence so I couldn't tell Elias anything else. You sent someone to my motel to rummage through my stuff. Admit it. Vivian's voice rose, sharp, defensive. I didn't even know where you're staying. Oh, right. You just let other people do your dirty work for you. Just like you did. Vivian's eyes glistened, but didn't cry. She never did. Not worth see. I didn't ask to take the fall. I never told Mom and Dad to throw you out. I was scared, okay? I was a kid and I was terrified and I did. You knew exactly what you were doing. Clara's voice was cold. You knew if everyone thought it was me, you gotta keep your life. And you let it happen. You watched them kick me out and you said nothing. And now you're sending people after me to make sure I didn't send anyone. Vivian raised her voice so loud it echoed the glass walls. God, Clara, you think it was about me? You think I'm the mastermind of everything? Not Mom and Dad. I think that. Then who was it? I challenged her. Who else cares enough to break into my rivers? Vivian opened, then closed it. A flicker of doubt, of realization crossed her face, like she was putting the piece. I don't know, she said fully, quieter. But it wasn't me. Clara didn't believe her. Not for a second. It was too convenient. Too easy to blame someone else. Vivian had always been good at that. Looking innocent. Let people take the heat. Sure, Clara said dryly. Of course it wasn't. Perfect never does anything wrong. Everyone always the bad guy. I'm not perfect, Vivian snapped. And I'm not the enemy here. You want to be mad at someone? Be mad at Mom and Dad. They're the ones who made the rules. They're the ones who threw you out. I was just trying to survive. Just like you were. Surviving means throwing your own sister under the bus. Surviving means not left with nothing. Vivian's voice cracked. If they'd found out it was me, sent me away too. They would have ruined my life. I couldn't let that happen. So you ruined mine instead. The worry and final between them. Vivian looked away. Her shoulders shook just a little. I'm sorry it happened that way. I am, but I can't take it back. And I can't let you destroy everything I've built. Not now. Not after I worked so hard. Clara stared at her. All the anger, the hurt she'd carried for 10 years, was something cold and hard. Then we're done. We're done being sisters. We're done with any of it. From now on, this isn't about family. This is about you getting what you deserve. I'm not stopping until you do. She turned and walked out before Vivian could reply. Last door clicked shut behind her. Out she ran straight into Lila. Lila's face was tight, crying or arguing with yelling. You okay? Fine. Clashed past her, slowing down. Clara? Wait. Lila followed her down the hall. Look, I heard about your motel room. That's terrible. That's crossing a line. But it's really worth it? Hurting everyone. Vivian's a mess. Your parents are furious. You're not even in, are you? You're just miserable. Clariston turned, voice sharp. They broke into my room, Lila. What? Am I supposed to just forgive and forget? Am I supposed to say it's okay because they're sorry caught? No, that's not what I'm... Lila sighed, frustrated. I'm saying there's a middle ground. You don't have to burn everything to ground to get justice. Talk to them. You can work something out. Work something out? With people who break into hotel rooms? With people who lied about me for 10 years? When did you become such a... Lila flinched like she'd been slapped. I'm not a coward. I'm being realistic. They have power, Clara. They have money and friends and influence. You're one person. You're just going to get hurt worse. So I should just roll over and let them walk all over me. Is that what you'd do? I'd pick my back. Lila's voice was steady but sad. The only person who stood at your side. For a second, Clara hesitated. But the anger was too hot, too raw. Who said you're on my side? Coldly. You've been on the fence since I got here. You don't want to pick sides because you don't want to risk your mom's job, your country club spot, your perfect little life. That's fine. But don't pretend you're here to make yourself... Lila's face fell. Okay, she said, quiet. How you feel? I'm sorry I tried to help. And walked away, back toward the crowd. Clara stood in the empty hallway, chest heaving. The anger was still there, but underneath it something hollow. Lila was right, somewhere deep down. She was alone. More alone than she'd been when she first drove into town. She walked out the old vegetable garden, away from the noise. She needed air. The back kitchen door was propped open. She could hear someone inside clanging pots, humming an old song. She leaned against the brick wall, closing her eyes, trying to calm down. Clara? Is that you, honey? She opened her eyes. Mabel, the estate cook since she was a kid, stood in the doorway wiping her hands. She'd snuck Clara cookies when had, bandaged her knee when she fell off. Clara managed a small, tired smile. Hey, Mabel. Goodness, it's been years. I saw you last night. I wanted to say hello, but everything was so... Clara nodded. She didn't know what to say. Mabel sighed, looking garden. Always knew they were too hard on you. Always. They sent you away. I told Harold wrong. I told him you were just a kid. He never did, when he made up his mind about something. You remember that day? Of course I do. Whole house was in chaos. Not just 'cause of you, either. Foundation folks in and out for weeks before that. Lawyers, accountants. Harold locked in his study midnight every night, yelling on the phone. Something about money. A missing donation. 20,000? Lord, I'm getting old. But it was a lot. Enough to make him sweat. She's squinting at old memories. Funny thing is, right after you left, all that stopped. The books, it was all a clerical error. Poof. Gone. Just that. Mabel patted him gently and went back inside. The screen door slammed behind her. Clara stayed where she was, leaning against the brick, sun but hands cold. Money missing from the station. She got thrown out. Suddenly, after she was gone, it was all fixed. She'd always thought she was thrown out of Vivian's pregnancy. That was the story she'd carried for 10 years. But what if that was only half of it? What if her parents hadn't just used her to hide Vivian's secret? What if they'd used her to hide something much bigger? Something with money. Something with nation. And she'd been mad at the wrong person. Named Vivian. She'd focused on her sister. Vivian had been just a pawn, too. Maybe they'd both been. The public library on Main Street smelled like old paper and lemon polish and cool basement air. Clara sat in a wooden carrel by the microfilm machine, laptop open, a stack of printed IRS forms spread across the table. It was 9 a.m, and the library was almost empty. She'd woken up at 6, mind racing with what Mabel had said. Money missing from the foundation, right before she'd been kicked out. And then, suddenly, it was all fixed. If there was one thing she'd learned running her own business, it was that money never just disappears and comes back on its own. Somebody moves it, somebody covers it up, and somebody usually takes the fall. The Bennett Family Foundation was a registered 501c3. Its tax filings were public. 990 forms, year after year, all available online. Clara pulled up every filing from 2014 through 2018, the years surrounding her departure. She scrolled through the 2016 filing first, the year she'd been kicked out. The numbers looked clean at a glance. Grants disbursed, administrative costs, fundraising expenses. Everything added up on the surface. But she'd spent 3 years reading vendor invoices until her eyes burned. She knew how to spot a line item that didn't quite sit right. There it was, halfway down page 7. Community Outreach Grant, $200,000. No recipient name. No follow-up report. No address, no description. Just community outreach and a 6-figure number. She checked the year before. No such grant. The year after. No such grant. Only 2006. Only the exact year everything had fallen apart. $200,000. That was the number Mabel had been fumbling. Not 20. 200. Clara leaned back, fingers pressed to earth. 200,000 missing from the foundation. And right at the same time, a huge family scandal erupts. Wild, disobedient daughter gets pregnant, disgraces the family, gets sick. Everyone talks about her. Everyone whispers about the pregnancy.
Nobody looks at the books, it was perfect.
A perfect She'd always thought her parents had thrown her out to preserve her reputation, keep the perfect daughter perfect. And that had been sure. But what if that wasn't all of it? What if Vivian's pregnancy had been convenient? What if Harold and Margaret had looked at their older daughter, looked at the hole in the foundation's finances, and realized they could kill 2 birds with 1 stone? Blame the pregnancy on the younger, messier daughter. Throw her out! Let the whole town gawk at the family drama. And while everyone's staring at the scandal, quietly patch the $200,000 hole. Bury it under a fake grant name. Let it fade away. Nobody would question it. They would dig. Because everyone already knew their story. The bad daughter who... Clara's a little. She printed the page, folded it, and slipped her. For 10 years she'd carried this story herself. About how she'd been sacrificed for Vivian's... It was true, but it was smaller than she'd thought. She hadn't just been sacrificed. She'd been sacrificed for money, for the foundation, for her father's reputation and his law firm he'd built. She wasn't just a figment. She was a scapegoat for a crime, everything. She packed up and walked out in bright June morning. Sidewalk hot under her boots, Main Street quiet, the diner buzzing with lunch crowds. By noon the next day, 3 more clients had emailed. Clara sat on the edge of her motel bed, scrolling through her inbox, coffee gone cold on the nightstand. Each message was polite, carefully worded, corporate courtesy hiding a knife. They'd heard rumors about personal family legal matters. They needed to reassess risk before moving forward. One major hotel project, 6 months in the making, was put on hold indefinitely. Her studio manager, Mia, called 10 minutes later, voice tight with worry. It's all over the Portland Design Group chat. Someone said you have a history of fraud, that you stole from a family charity. The lumber supplier called too. They want to move our terms to net 15 instead of net 30. Clara closed her eyes and leaned back. It's my father. He's leaning on people, trying to pressure me into leaving. Clara. Mia hesitated. Is any of it true? The charity stuff? No. Her voice was sharper than she intended. None of it. Not the way he's telling. Okay, I believe you. Mia sighed. But it doesn't matter if it's true if everyone else believes it. Perception is everything in this business. How long do you need to be out there? Because if this keeps up for another week, I'll hit. Clara. Just hold the line a few more days. She hung up and dropped the phone on. Across the room, the white envelope with the $50,000 check sat in the lamp, thick and quiet. Harold hadn't been. He'd follow. And he was just getting started. Her phone button. A long text from Lila, the kind you write and rewrite before hitting. I'm so sorry about all of this. My mom got called into the foundation office yesterday. They asked her if she'd been told, if she'd given you any files. She's 3 years from retirement. She can't lose this job. I can't do this anymore. I can't be in the middle. I wish you'd just take the money home. This isn't worth ruining everything. Clara stared. She typed and deleted the replies. Angry, hurt. In the end, she just typed, I understand. She set the phone down and looked around the small, dented motel room, the ransacked suitcases, the coffee carpet, the envelope full of money on the desk. Alone. Completely alone. Her hated her. Her resented her. Her only fucked away. Her business was being picked apart one client at a time. She'd driven across the country thinking strong, thinking 10 years of hard work had. But Harold licked his wrist, and suddenly everything she'd built crumbled. She picked up the envelope and ran her heel. $50,000. It wasn't life-changing anymore, but it was enough. Enough to cover lost contracts, enough to smooth things over with suppliers, enough to go back to Portland and pretend this ever happened. All she had to give away. Let them win. Let the stories. She thought 18-year-old her, standing in this same town with a case and a bus ticket, convinced the host her. For 10 years, she'd told herself it's better than this, them. That she herself were right. What if she was the same angry kid, picking a fight she couldn't win? She stood up, grabbed her jacket, her car. Didn't have a destination. She just drove west toward the hills, highway rolling out in front of her. She could keep going, she thought. Just keep driving west, all the way back to Oregon. No goodbyes, no fuss, just gone. She pulled into a diner parking lot on the edge of town and went inside. She sat in a booth by the window, burger and coffee. Wasn't hungry. The place was half empty. Just a few truckers at the counter and a coffee across the room. Normal with normal problems. Her phone, unknown number. Massachusetts area code. Probably another client. Probably Harold's lawyer. Hello, Clara. This is Elias. She froze. I got your number from Lila. Well, she didn't exactly. I asked. She didn't say no. His voice was calm, a little tired. I talked to you, in person, somewhere not on the estate. Clara glanced the diner window. Why? Leave your wife alone? Vivian and I haven't exactly talking since the welfare. He paused. I don't think you're the one lying here. Can we meet? Half an hour. That's all I'm asking. She hesitated. Maybe it was a trap. Maybe Margaret had put him up to it. But this was the first crack in the walls had built around truth. Sure, she said. There's a coffee shop on Route 7, west of town. The Blue Bean. 30 minutes. She got there first. She sat at a table in the back facing the coffee in front of her. Elias walked in 10 minutes later, jeans and a plain button-down. No wedding entourage. For the time, he looked like a regular person, not a perfect wedding. He sat down across from her and ordered a scotch. Thanks for meeting me. Cut the small talk, Clara said. What do you want? He nodded like he received that. I want the truth. About 10 years ago. Margaret's version is that you were a troubled kid who ran away and came back begging for money. Vivian won't talk about it at all. Down every time I bring you up. He leaned forwardly. I don't like being lied to. And I've been married to your sister for 48 hours, lying about something big. Clara studied him. She looked for the smug, rich kid, the family loyalist who'd marry a Bennett for... She didn't see it. She saw someone frustrated, tired of being in the dark. She told him, not all of it. Not the foundation money, not yet. But the rest. The choice her parents had made. Her out and let everyone think it was her. The 10 years of silence, of Vivian letting it happen. She told him flat. No drama, just the facts. When she finished, sat back and his drink for a long time. "Wow," he said finally. "That's something. I knew she was hiding. But I didn't think it was that." "Surprised?" Clara dryly. "No, she's so perfect. All the time. She's performing. But he's actually that perfect." Stirred his drink. "So why did you come back, really? Just to ruin the wedding? At first?" "Yeah, kind of." Looked out the window. "I wanted them to have to look at me. I wanted to admit what they did. But then I found something else." She paused, weighing her options. She told him about the foundation. There was no going back. This being a family fight and started being so. "What else?" I said. "Before we got," he said slowly, choosing his words, "we did prenups. My lawyer went through all the family assets, including the foundation stuff Vivian stands to inherit. He flagged a few things. Grants with no recipient listed. Transfers between accounts that didn't make sense. He asked about it, and Vivian got really said it was old burs, not a big deal." He looked up at her. "But 200,000 isn't a bookkeeping error, is it?" Clara's breath caught. "How did you—" "I know how to 90, he said, with a small, dry smile. "I work in finance. I looked up the foundation last night, after the dinner. 2016 was a weird year. Same year everything happened with you. Same year the community outreach grant appears out." He leaned forward again, voice lower. "You think they used your scandal to stealing from the foundation, don't you?" Clara at him. For the first time since town, she didn't feel like she was fighting. It wasn't just Vivian's husband. He was an outsider. He'd been lied to, same as her. And he had access to things she could never get. Internal finance, prenup documents, files. Harold thought he'd already won. He thought he could pressure a few clients and Clara would tuck her tail and run. She was still that scared 8-year-old with nothing and no one. But he made a mistake. He'd been so focused on her that he had paid attention to the son-in-law he'd worked so hard to acquire. Clara reached into her bag and pulled out the folded copy of the 2016-90. She slid it across the table. 200. "I think there's more. I just can't get to it from the outside." Elias picked up the paper, it over, jaw tight. "I can get you more," he said. Quiet. "If you want." Outside, a truck rumbled by. Somewhere in the dine aft. Clara looked at the paper on the table. She looked at Elias, sitting, a stranger who was suddenly the only person on her side. She thought about the $50,000 checks on her motel desk. She thought about her clients pulling out. She thought about life. She thought of years of carrying someone else's lie. "Okay," she said finally, voice steady, sharp, no more hesitation. "Let's find out what really happened." Afternoon sun slanted through oak trees as Elias turned the rental car onto the Bennett estate, slowing near the side garage entrance. Clara sat low in the passenger seat, baseball cap pulled down, folder of documents tight against her side. They'd spent an hour at the diner mapping it out. Margaret was at a foundation board meeting in Pittsfield until 4. Harold was stuck in Boston depositions. Most wedding guests had checked out, leaving the house quiet except for housekeeping finishing up. "Vivian left an hour ago for the spa with her mother's bridge group," Elias said, slipping the house key into the side door lock. "She won't be back till late. We've got maybe 2 hours." The lock clicked. They slipped inside. The back hallway smelled like lemon polish and fresh bread from the kitchen. Somewhere down the hall, a vacuum droned. They hugged the wall, moving fast toward the back staircase, avoiding the main foyer where the cleaning crew worked. Harold's study was on the second floor, west wing end. The door was locked. Elias pulled a small brass key, Vivian's copy, taken off her nightstand that morning, and turned it. The door swung open with a soft, heavy creak. The room smelled like old cigar smoke and leather. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined every wall, packed with law books and bound charity reports. A heavy mahogany desk sat in front of the window, surface clear, except for a brass lamp and a framed photo of Vivian's graduation. Everything exactly the way Harold liked. "Files are in the cabinet by the fireplace," Elias said, nodding toward a tall oak cabinet. "I saw him going through old foundation binders last. 2015 through 2018 should be top shelf," Clara did. She moved to the desk and, pulling open the top drawer, slow and quiet so the wood wouldn't. "I'll check the desk for personal You handle the finance." The top drawer held pens, paper clips, aspirin, nothing. The second held old letters, bank statements, a stack of birthday. The third drawer, she jiggled it gently, and it at the very Tucked under tax returns was a thick manila envelope. The front was labeled in Margaret's neat hand. Clara. Return. Clara's throat. She pulled in. Inside were 6 letters, all addressed to her old boss apartment, all stamped, returned. The handwriting on the envelopes was Vivian's. She'd been telling. Margaret had never let. Clara's hands shook a little as she pulled out the letter, postmarked 3 months after she'd been. I'm so sorry. I begged them not to. I told them I'd tell everyone. But Dad said did. He'd make sure you never got into any deal. Never got a job anywhere. He said he'd ruin you completely. I didn't know what else to do. I'm sending $50 with this. It's all I have right now. Please don't ever. Clara stared at the words. For 10 years, she'd carried this story. Vivian. Perfect, selfish Vivian, who'd let her take the fall and it was true mostly. Vivian hadn't enough. Vivian had chosen her own safe for her sister, but she had gotten. She'd tried, in her small, scared way, and Margaret had cut even head. Elias's was tight, urgent. You need. She stuffed the letters back in the envelope and slipped into her bag, then walked over to the file. Elias had pulled out a thick binder labeled Foundation Audit 20 Draft. He pointed it at the back, finger resting on a handwritten. Typed line read, 200,000 shortfall. Reclassified as Q program grant. Bank consulting. Active. Beneath it, Harold's sharp writing. Timing of family matter mention. No follow-up required. Claire's blood ran cold. There it was, written in black and white. The 200,000 was a clerical error. It was a deliberate transfer from the foundation to Harold's law firm. Disguised. Her family matter, her scandal, her reputation, her expulsion, her cover. Everyone had been too busy talking about the pregnant Bennett daughter to act on. Law consulting. Elias, quiet. That's a shell. It doesn't do any actual consulting work. It's just a pass-through Harold's personal stuff. My lawyer flagged it during prenup, but Vivian for estate planning. He looked up, jaw tight. He pulled from his own charity to hide it. Leaned against the cabinet, room spinning a little. She'd come here angrily betrayal. She'd left home thinking her parents had thrown her out to Prince's reputation. But it had never Vivian at all. About money. About power. About protecting Harold's name and his firm little empire. Vivian's convenient. And Clara had been the easy bus. Slammed downstairs, they both froze. A woman's sharp familiar called from the foyer. Helen, is anyone home? Left my tablet in the study. Margaret. She was early. Almost hours early. Shit, Elias breathed. He slammed the binder and jammed it back on the shelf. Have to go. Now. Clara the audit page into her folder. They moved fast, quiet, toward the back staircase. Margaret's heels on marble coming closer. She was arm of the main stairs. They slipped through the back hallway past the kitchen, where washing dishes. The door creaked as they pushed through, and they ran up the back lawn toward the garage. They made it to the car just as they opened upstairs. Elias fumbled with the keys, hands shaking a little, and the on the second try. Out of the side drive fast. Fast it would draw attention. They drove tense, neither speaking, until they pulled into a gas station past the town line. Elias turned off the engine and leaned back, blowing out a long breath. Okay, we have it. We have the proof. Clara nodded. She pulled the envelope of letters out of her bag and set it on her lap, running a finger over the stack. She wrote to me. Sick Margaret never sent them. Elias looked over, expression softening just a little. What are you going? I don't know. Clara stared at the envelope. For 10 years, anger had been easy. Anger was simple, but this was messy. Vivian wasn't just the villain. She was another person trapped by their parents. Not that it excused her. Not by God, but it changed things. Margaret's gonna know someone was in the study, Elias said, pulling out own. The binder was out of place. The desk drawer was open. She's gonna put it together. She's gonna know it's you. And me. Clara looked up. Then we move faster. We don't wait for her after us. We go on the offensive. She pulled out her own phone and opened her email. The client messages were still there, rumors still swirling, something she didn't. Proof. Leak the audit page first, she said, anonymously. To the foundation board, to the local paper, to the state attorney general's charity division. Let them ask the questions. Let Harold try $100,000 that went nowhere. Elias raised, you want to take him down completely. He took everything from me, Clara said. Sharp, no more hesitation. For money, for his reputation. I'm not just here to win an argument. I'm here to miss to anyone else ever again. Elias watched her for a second. Then he nodded. Okay, then do it right. I have a friend who does forensic accounting. He can go through all the filings. Find every other time they did this. It won't just be tween. People like Harold don't steal. Clara's phone buzzed in her hand. The screen Lily hadn't expected. She stared at the screen. The letters in her lap felt heavy. The audit page in her folder felt heavier. She would have answered ready to fight. A week ago, she would have answered ready to gloat, but now, she didn't know. Stopped buzzing. The screen went dark. A second later, a text popped up. We need to talk. I know you were at the house. Mom's furious. Not going to stop. Clara looked up at Elias. Vivian knows. Elias's jaw tight. What did she say? That we need to talk. That Margaret's furious. He's quiet for a second. He's gonna turn on us? Clara thought about the letters. About 18-year-old Vivian, scared and alone, what their parents told her. About 30-year-old Vivian, married to a man she'd lied to, perfect on the outside and hollow underneath. I don't, she said. She slipped the... But whatever she's planning, we're ready. Car. A truck rumbled past on the highway. The sun dipped low, painting clouds pinkish. For the first time since she'd been into town, feel like she was on the run. She was winning. And somewhere back at the estate, Margaret Bennett was standing in her husband's study, staring at a file cabinet and a half-open drawer, and she knew it too. The motel room smelled like burnt coffee and printer paper. Clara sat at the small desk, laptop open to the State Attorney General's online charity fraud portal, the scanned audit page and Harold's handwritten note attached as PDFs. Elias leaned against the dresser, scrolling through his phone, his forensic accountant friend texting back a running list of additional red flags in the 2017 and 2018 filings. It wasn't just 200,000. It was closer to 500,000, spread across 4 years, hidden under vague program grants and administrative fees. Once we hit send on this complaint, there's no taking it back, Elias said, looking up. They'll investigate. It'll get messy. It'll be in the papers. Good. Clara's finger hovered over the submit button. That's the point. A sharp, firm knock on the door made them both freeze. Clara muted the laptop and stood up slow, hand drifting to the letter opener on the desk. She peered through the peephole. It was Vivian. She stood in the parking lot in jeans and a plain sweater. No makeup, hair pulled back, nothing like the polished bride from the wedding. She looked like she hadn't slept. Her eyes were red. Clara unlocked the door and pulled it open, but didn't step back to invite her in. What are you doing here? Can we talk? Vivian's voice was raw, worn thin. Please. Mom knows someone was in the study yesterday. She's going through every file in the house right now. She thinks it was you. She's talking about calling the police, pressing charges for breaking and Clara didn't. She'd have to explain why we were looking for what we found. I don't think she wanted. Vivian glanced at her, at Elias in the background, at papers spread across the desk. Her jaw. So it's true. You two are working together. Your husband doesn't like being with you, Clara said dryly. Shocking. Vivian flinched like she'd been. She stepped forward, lowering her. I know. About the money. About any of that. I thought they threw you out because of me. Because of pregnancy. I had no idea he was stealing from the mission. Clara. For 10 years, she'd blamed Vivian for everything. Silence. Lies. For the life she'd lost. And part of that blame still there. But standing there, looking at her sister's face, Vivian was just as much a pawn. Because Vivian never left. He'd stayed. Let them shape her into what they wanted. And never even know. Clara stepped aside. Vivian walked to the desk and looked down at the scanned audit page, at Harold's handwriting. Breath caught. She reached out and touched the screen, like she couldn't real. He used us, both of us. The whole pregnancy, all the yelling, shame. It was just a for him. Elias spoke from the dresser, voice flat. He'd marriage hard. My family's charitable trust was planning a $750,000 donation to the Bennett family order. He needed that money to plug the holes. Marrying you off to me was happiness. It was about cash flow. Vivian went pale. She sat down on the edge of the bed, hands in her lap. I've spent 10 years feeling guilty, she said finally, voice wobbly. 10 years I ruined your life. This time he was just using both of us to steal money who needed it. She pulled the phone out and held it up. The screen showed a text from Margaret earlier. Tell the police Clara broke into the house and stole family documents. Say she's been harassing us for money. We'll get a restraining order. This is... Fix it. Vivian and set it down. I'm not going to do it. I've spent my whole life fixing this. I'm done. She reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out a small silver USB drive on the desk between them. Dad has had me signing foundation paperwork for years. Grant approvals, vendor contracts, board minutes. I never quit it. I thought it was normal, training me to take over some. But after the dinner, after you started talking about the money, I started going through file on my laptop. There's more. A lot more. Transfers to shell companies. Payments to vendors that don't exist. I didn't understand, but now I do. Clara picked up the drive and turned it over in her fingers. This was bigger than a single audit page. This was the whole paper trail. This was take Harold down for good. Why are you giving me? Clara said it. You could earn it. You could protect the family name. The family name is a lie. Vivian's voice broke. And he's not protecting me. Never has. He's just been using me. All of it. I was too scared to see it. Elias pushed off the dresser and walked over. The foundation's having its annual luncheon tomorrow at the country club. All the board members, all the biggest donors, local press. If we present this there, publicly, he can't talk his way out of it. He can't bear it. Vivian nodded slow. I'll do it. I'll speak. I'm the one who signed half the verse. If I say it, they'll believe it. Clara stared at her. A week ago, she would have laughed at the idea of Vivian standing up in front of everyone and calling their father a thief. A day ago, she would have called it a trap. But right now, sister's face, she believed her. Her phone buzzed in it. She pulled it out. Unknown number. One line. You won? You have no idea what's coming. She didn't guess who it was from. Harold knew. He knew one was here. He knew they have. He knew the walls were closing in. She set the phone desk face up. Tomorrow, she said, steady. We do it tomorrow. No more secrets. Everything comes out. Outside, the sun dipped below the hills, painting the parking lot orange and purple. So highway, a siren wailed and distant. Vivian stood up. She looked at Clara, and for the first time in 10 years, she didn't look like the older sister, guilty bride, or enemy. Just looked tired and a little bit brave. I'll see you tomorrow, she said. She let herself out. Behind her, Ella. You trust her? Clara took the USB drive and plugged it into her laptop. The files popped up, rows and rows of sheets, years of them. I don't know, but voice. She's the only one who can make this stick. She clicked on the first folder. Numbers stared back, cold and damning. Tomorrow, at the lunch, it would all end, one way or another. And so across town, Harold Bennett was sitting in his study, door locked, phone calls, planning his next move. He wasn't the kind of man who went down easy. And Clara was about to find out how far he was willing to go to keep what was his.